Hello and welcome, Tessa. Such an exciting episode ahead of us. I can already tell. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are, and to be here and to share your story and to just have a great conversation.
Thank you, Lavanya, so much for having me. I've admired you since I distinctly remember the first time I met you, and I would think I was 24 years old. So I feel honored that you asked me, little old me, to be here. I feel so excited. So thanks for asking.
Likewise, yes. I remember you very distinctly also from the time I was at the Salt Lake Chamber. You know, some connections are like that. Like some friendships are, there's a certain spark that you can feel within you when you see some people. Maybe it's the soul connection. I believe in that. Mm-hmm. Or we all have some common values or, principles we live by that energetically kind of align and match when we see people. And that has always been my experience with many women in Salt Lake, as you will also appreciate. And it's been a great journey, but you are a fond part of my my time at the Salt Lake Chamber. So, of course.
I also didn't ever have, besides my mom, really, I didn't have a lot of examples of women in power, especially on the entrepreneur side. So when I met you when you were just starting your entrepreneur journey, I was just like, oh, that woman, how brave. Because even at 24 years old, I was certain that was my path, and I just hadn't had the guts to jump yet, or maybe didn't feel like I was ready or didn't have the knowledge. I kept getting talked out of it by the grown-ups in the room. And you were like that example for me. Wow. And just growing up in the time, I grew up in, I just that wasn't a thing. And now it's everywhere. And I'm so glad that my girls get to grow up with women mentorship in such a different way than maybe, I don't know about you, but I didn't have a lot of access to that. So I feel so excited to be in a different time and be part of that now on the flip side.
Contrary to what you just told me, I feel like you started really young. Yeah, 24, 25 is very young.
But I wasn't an entrepreneur yet. I was working for someone else in that program that we're referencing. So I wasn't until I think I was 31 when I bought my first business.
Amazing. And I can't wait to dive into all of that. But just so our listeners get an overview of your story, tell us how you got here, your origin story. Would love to hear that.
Well, where am I now? Maybe that's a good spot to start, and then I can go backwards. But I think that's such a big question, right? How did we get here? And let's call it 5 or 10 really big sliding door moments that got us here. Yeah. Maybe there's many more than that, but for my life, there's definitely those few. And now I'm in this really fortunate position to be in real estate development and community development in a space that there's not a lot of women buildings, and to be in a place in Salt Lake that is really open and the appetite's really big for the creation of that, and being able to build the Maven District and Maven as a whole with a handful of different brands underneath it or different arms. And I feel so lucky to have been able to do that and to create. Now I feel like I get to really be directed in the purpose of creating spaces for women to be empowered. And for what that looks like for us, we build spaces for women to fill up and locally owned businesses to be started and accessible. And right now we sit on over 100 businesses rent from us. 100% of them are local, and 85% of them are women-owned. And so now that's what I hang my hat on, being able to do that. And if I did nothing else the rest of my life, I'd be like, great. at least we open those doors for those women. So we're really, really fortunate to be able to do that with the work that my team and I get to do. But then to back up from that, I think I grew up in Utah and left from a set of entrepreneur parents. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs, and always believed that I could do anything I set my heart out to, even though there was not that many examples of women in power. And so when I left for college and left Utah, I was so excited to leave Utah. I thought Utah's just this small-minded place. Women don't have the same access. They're treated differently. I'm told to sit at home and wait for my husband to tell me what to do, and I'm the one that's supposed to raise the children. And I was really angry about that. So I left Utah in a bit of a angry teenager, for college, and went to school in upstate New York and lived in a bunch of places. And along the way, stumbled back home after finishing a little before my friends in college, and fell in love with the outdoor access, fell in love with the lifestyle, and fell in love with, actually, this is such a cool place to live.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I want to go work for the Utah Board of Tourism because I love Utah so much.
Wow.
So now here I am after being in, I had my start in design and worked with my father at a kitchen manufacturing company. And I was this little tiny kid wearing grown-up clothes and learning all those funny lessons you have to learn when you're 21, 22, 23. And then exited and went and worked with a product marketing agency and worked in manufacturing, in packaging, and worked with clients overseas and learned. I felt like I just got almost like an MBA in a bunch of different businesses and learning from our clients, jumped into film, worked in commercial film production, and then really fell in love with what would happen if I did my dream job. And at the time, if you were to ask me, I would have answered with a barista.
Okay.
Or a Pilates instructor. And I always felt a little embarrassed by that answer because I felt like, is that too fluffy? Is that not real enough or serious enough? And, as like this young woman trying to make her space in the world in a funny state like Utah, I thought maybe that wasn't, serious enough or big enough, or there was always that like self-doubt or that I am either too much or too little. And then purchased my first business, which was a Pilates studio from a friend of mine, and that was up in this cute little neighborhood in 9th and 9th for you Salt Lake listeners. And then was able to, from there, started thinking about, and I did that with the help of my husband, which I always credit as like, he was my net. He allowed me to jump. Many, many years have felt a lot of shame around that. A lot that I didn't do it by myself. And I keep trying to like rewrite that history a bit is like, maybe he was my net and he's always been here, and believe that women should have an equal space and playing field that men do, because he gets easier access to loans. He has better banking relationships. He's looked at as a lower risk person to bank from or to lend to. And so he's always had that access, and he's always believed in me. And so when I came to him with this idea, not only to buy a Pilates studio, but then shortly after, what would it be like if we surrounded our wellness businesses with other wellness businesses? And then what would it be like if we could surround those businesses with other businesses that we believed in? Whether it was a restaurant space or a place to get your eyebrows waxed or a place to get your knee rehabbed. How would that be if we could start building this? In my mind, it was one building, because I didn't own my building at the time when I bought the Pilates studio. And immediately people were coming in. You get this intimacy when you're in these small studios where people are saying, I've always thought your brows and lashes are bangerang, Lavanya. So I would be one of those people saying, where do you get those done? And then you're sending me 20 minutes away from where I'm at. And so I'm driving all over Salt Lake. And I started thinking, well, what would happen if we put them all together in the same space? And we're really intentional about who we were saying yes to. And in the beginning, we didn't know, when we got lucky and purchased a handful of buildings side by side, we didn't know what we would attract. I was very all for locally owned. That was always part of my DNA. Growing up in Ogden, I think there's just like that, like people love to support in Utah. They love to support locally owned.
Yes,
like it's just,
for sure.
It's kind of built in. And maybe that's too bit of a generalization, but definitely certain pockets for sure. So for me, that was always important. And then when our first year in, we turned around in our first building, now we have 10, we turned around and there were 20 businesses that we rented to. 19 of them were women owned. Wow. And that was accidental. For sure. Yeah. And what we then started looking at was, how do women do this differently? And what are their troubles that they go through in order to open a business? And then we started to build specifically for that. And we talked about it in a different way. And then we also celebrate the men that decide to rent from us too, because we're like, that's cool. Most places in the world are built by men, and women have to be in them without a lot of choice, right? So what happens if a lot of spaces are built by women or designed by women, and men choose to be in that space? And how do they show up maybe differently, or maybe less of a mask, or in a more supportive way, or an ally way? Like those things I'm all super curious about. So now, almost 10 years in, we're getting there. We started in 2015 with construction, so we're coming along. We now have a lot of data on what works and what we think women-owned businesses need in order to start, and then in order to grow, and then sometimes also in order to shrink, because there's a lot of people that you've probably seen a bunch over the course of your tenure in business, where people get into entrepreneurship and then they are like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And I don't love it. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. So how do we then help them exit as well? Yeah. So those are some of the things that we toy with, and that's I just feel so lucky that this is my job now, and that I get to work with a team of amazing women that are constantly thinking about, what does Salt Lake need, and how can we be impactful, and how can we think about building empowering spaces for women.
Yeah. Wow. This is the true definition of a soulpreneur, Tessa, which is a word that I coined with entrepreneurship, but where you're someone who is so passionate and so purposeful in their work, in impacting the community, and just uplifting everybody around them. So
yeah, I've been curious about that, because I agree. Like, I feel so lucky to do this work, but how much of that is because of my privilege in order to investigate that, with the net that I was given as college was assumed. My parents helped me pay for college, and I had to take on loans, but I got a really great education. I'm white. I know the language. I'm not working with a second language. Like, I'm married to a man that has access to banking and loans in a much easier way. So I'm really curious about that, because I used to tout in my younger years of like, everyone can find their purpose. Yeah. But I also got to flail around a whole bunch, and yes, I grinded, and there were, trauma that helped me rise up, and all that resiliency stuff that everybody goes through. But how much of it is also like, I'm also really lucky. Yeah. So because of that, what can I use that for to create other nets?
Yeah, beautiful. Here's my thought on that. With great power comes great responsibility. The bigger the privilege,
Gates, right?
The more responsibility, and that's how you're showing up. So entrepreneurship is challenging. It's not for everyone. And so if you're taking larger risks, you definitely are handling larger challenges, and you're built for that. So I admire you, and I think it's your humility that recognizes the privilege, and which is all true. But I think we have to underscore your grit, your determination, your passion, and your drive, and just working relentlessly in building what you are.
And I think I have a hard time. I think some of that is my work at accepting that. I mean, I get sweaty, when you say that, because I want to justify it, but like, but I had to do it on the coat. And someone pointed out to me, she's like, I hate that when you use the word coattails of your husband. It's like, you two are partners, and you two built this in such a way. And yes, maybe it couldn't happen at the scale without him, but also like, you're discounting the work you've done. And so for years, I've felt really a lot of sense of shame around using his support, and never felt like my work could stand on its own. And so I have this quest to have it stand on its own. And it's like, why? And I think I'm really, really excited about what equality could actually look like. And maybe that's a small piece of it, of just growing up in a state where women still in 2024 4 do not have equal access to a whole bunch of things. So maybe that's part of it, but I definitely have some, I still have some uncovering as to how to really embrace that. So I'm not discounting, the work we've done, but also I can, stand in it and be like, this is, my husband has chosen to stand up, and we have 2 girls, and he's making the world a better place. So it's really tricky. I've had a tricky relationship with the fact that he has the role of figuring out how to finance our buildings. And I have the role of, I'm on the people side and the design side and the partnership side. And then my team handles everything else on the brand side. And that has always been hard, that he has like owned the money, more of the money piece. And I don't know fully what that about. It's probably some deep stuff. So I'm still uncovering.
You want to uncover it? Let's do it.
I'm still working through it.
Wow. Yes. Yet you are the face of the brand. Everybody knows Tessa is Maven. And so your, impact on the community with what you've built is huge, with all respect to Tim. And he is a great ally, and he has supported you from day one. And it's beautiful that you recognize that. And I think finance is one piece, but it's not everything. For, even when you give $1 million to someone who doesn't know what to do with it, they're going to spend it in a way that's not most favorable. So, but I think you both just bring in such great synergistic energy to what you're creating, and I've seen him a few times. He is a gentleman to the core, and he has like you said, given you that net and helped you fly, which we all need. I think family is a big part of entrepreneurship, to have that support, and there's no shame in that. You're lucky.
I do feel lucky.
Yes.
And my business partner Rocky Donati pointed it out recently. He's like, stop discounting him, because it also discounts you. And so I'm working on massaging that, because she's like, why shouldn't we have a man at the table? He's the best man. Bring him to the table. Let him be part of it. And I know he's down for it, obviously, because he's never questioned our direction in 10 years, and he's fully supported it. So I feel really lucky to have him and the people that choose to show up every day to work with us, but also to rent with us, and then to choose. We have a lot of residential units, to choose to live next to us and make this neighborhood what it is, a vibrant, walkable, locally owned neighborhood that is filled with art and makers and creatives and mental health professionals and restaurateurs. I just feel like so incredibly lucky that people, this grand experiment, because I honestly had no idea if it was going to work. And it was like, I was just running and jumping off this cliff. And we put every penny we had at the time towards the first big chunk of the buildings. And so we had no idea if this could work. And no one believed in us. Like people were, one of our bankers, we were kicking out H&R Block for that used to be in one of our buildings. And they were horrified because they're what you call a nationally accredited tenant. And so they were like, you're going to kick someone out that's a nationally accredited tenant to put in locally owned businesses that are brand new, that might fail. And they just did not believe in the model. So it took us a while to make sure that loan could go through, because they were like, no, this is not a thing. And now we have proof of concept. So it's a little easier for them to believe it, because we don't have a lot of vacancy, if at all. So now they'll loan on it. But before, it was not a proven concept and not really something people did. And they, in fact, would always attract tenants on the national level in order to make their buildings worth more, which then changes the whole face of downtowns and takes out this, in my opinion, the soul of a neighborhood. As soon as a national tenant goes onto a block, the entire block changes. It's just a, not to say there's not some great national brands out there, but we turn them down, because we just really believe that, like, hey, if we are going to be something unique and something different, we have to ride on this locally owned thing, or we can't be unique.
Yeah.
We can't be, I grew up in Ogden, and there's this, I wouldn't call it a neighborhood, but a part of Ogden called Riverdale. And it is like every chain, anything. And if you're in it, you don't know if you're in New Jersey, Ogden, you have no idea, because anywhere you look, it's just national chains.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to build that.
Yeah.
That's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that are good at doing that, and I do believe they're important for the community in other ways, and access, and costs and everything. But I think for a neighborhood creation, using old spaces and rehabbing them and having some living and having walkable is a really important piece, and local.
For sure. You're
to
a true
that.
community champion. A few words that you said really stood out to me. You used the word lucky a couple times. You got lucky. I think luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. It really is. So
That quote's above my husband's desk,
Right.
Or has been for a bunch of years.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we're not prepared and the opportunity can just pass us, and when we prepared and we meet the opportunity at the right time, and it's magic happens.
I love
and
your
we
outlook.
We can call it luck.
I'm
yes.
gonna sit next to you so you can rub off on me more.
It's true. And then the other word you use is a grand experiment. I love that. I think entrepreneurship is a grand experiment. It's, you're venturing into the unknown, and you just it's like unlocking different levels of the video game. And you're right. People actually believe in what you have already done, but what you're capable of doing. And so,
I don't actually think we know what we're capable of doing.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
I think we
At least dream of.
we can dream of,
Yeah.
right? But we don't
Yeah.
fully know. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's what pushes.
Yeah.
Like, when we get into those hard spaces, that's where your growth edge is just like, you expanded your little heart, or you expanded your skill set, or you expanded yourself. Like, ooh, I never thought I could do that.
Right.
And now you can. So I do believe that like there is this idea of, sounds so cheesy, but like never stop growing, never stop learning. That's a big part of Maven's ethos in what we believe. It's who I want to rent to. It's who I want to work with. Yeah. I met my business partner and begged her to work with me in a parking lot, because I was like, this woman thinks faster than I've ever thought. And she is here because she wants to grow, not because she's trying to, like find something. Like, she wanted to be part of something bigger. Yeah. And that was such, and it's how I found my COO. Like, it's exactly the kind of person that I want. And every person we hire, we hope that they need to believe in this. It has to be bigger than me. Yeah. Right? Because like, I'm not going to be here forever. I want to create impact in my limited time that I have in this world. And every person that works with Maven or runs for Maven has some sort of belief like that, or they wouldn't be with us. They might think we're pretty and cool, which is great. I'm stoked to be that when we can, but that's so surface level. I really want people to want to be part of something bigger, to create change. And like, one day I hope my girls don't have to bring their dad with them to, get a bank loan. Yeah. I don't want them to have to go through what I go through. So I need people like that are at my table, and that is who fills it up.
Lovely. I mean, you're so clear and intentional about who you want in your inner circle. You definitely attract them. And I'd love to know more about that journey, about when you started getting in this creative talent. And just today I saw this quote. I want to mention it as you're talking about talent. And I think it was by Simon Sinek. And he said,
genius.
Right?
In the purpose space. So those of you looking for purpose, look at Simon Sinek.
Yeah. He said, you don't hire skilled people and motivate them to be great team members or leaders. You hire people who are already motivated and you inspire them. That's so cool. Yes.
Yeah, because we can teach any skill, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I can't teach.
Yeah.
I can't teach someone that I want them to show up and not only work hard, but just believe that the work they're doing is. I want them to believe in not only their own greatness, but like the mission of like, hey, let's make Salt Lake cooler. Let's make it more accessible for women to have power. Let's dismantle what power looks like, and let's get more women empowered. Like I have to have them believe that. If not, we're probably not going to align. It's going to fall flat and they're not going to enjoy it. And we still make those mistakes too, but we hope that's who we're attracting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your values are so clear that you attract people with similar values, or that's beautiful. Very purpose-driven, mission-driven, vision-oriented entrepreneur model that you built. As you were telling me all the things that you get to do, it's to summarize, you are a real estate developer, you are a boutique hotel owner.
That's the hardest one for me right now, for sure.
Is it the latest project?
It's the latest and greatest and hardest.
Okay. Well, it's going to give you so much growth, right? Like in the next level, Why
did I think this was going to be easy? But yes.
Co-working space owner, as well as landlord to 100 different, retail establishments, an incubator of sorts, entrepreneurial incubator, a mentor, a mother. Oh, you have darling girls. How old are they?
3 and 7.
Wow. You're in the thick of momhood. Yes.
Yeah, I just dropped my tiniest off at preschool for the first time yesterday. And the transitions are always so big. You have kids, you understand those moments where, wow, that's my last first day of preschool I will ever have. Yeah. Because for me, there's no more babies. So and I want to soak it up, and I want to be present for them. And I want to make sure, when you used the word busyness when we first started, I am really trying to get away from that word and that space, because I don't love the work I do in it. I don't like how I feel. I don't, it's something that my team and I are working on getting out of, and trying to hey, could we do less? This is really hard for me because I love to do a lot instead of be. Could we do less and do them at a deeper, better level than do more and keep growing? Because man, we've been drinking from a fire hose for 10 years at this growth, the amount of things we've been building. Could we slow that down? And actually, how much time do we even get to think about that? I love thinking about that, but could we create something really beautiful around that at a deeper level if we were able to sit with it, rather than be like, that's great, now let's go do these 10 other things. So that is something I'm toying with and trying to add more things to my list of ways I'm trying to grow or anything like that. But this idea of how can we live with more space as opposed to this busyness and overscheduled. So
I think that's the superpower, to even be aware of that the hustle culture is no longer sustainable. It's just gone are the days where we were hustling for our worth, It's adding value to our own lives, our families, our communities, and, waking up every morning with really joyful heart to go out and create impact is where I had to bring myself to, because...
How did you get out of since I'm studying this right now, shifting from, because we will always, as entrepreneurs, have 1 million things that we could be doing. Yeah. So how did you shift from busyness to able to be intentional, but space? Yeah. Because having more space and not having to run means that deeper connection that I'm seeking. What were your things?
I wanted to be more intentional in my life and in my business, and, having burnt out from the busyness of being an entrepreneur for over 10 years, having started 10 different restaurants, and you know how that is. It was COVID.
10. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I forget that number. It blows my mind.
But yes. And it was COVID. I actually had an ankle fracture, which physically put me on the couch for a few weeks, which is when I realized I had to take a hard look at my life, because I think we are constantly running away from our inner self for a long time until we get to that part where, at least that's my experience, that I was I had to take a hard look at my life and change some things and redefine how I wanted to live this life in accordance with my inner values and my purpose, and not as what the society told me success is. So I had to redefine success for myself.
What does that practice look like for you now? And how do you stay out of overwhelm or busyness? Like, what are your practices now?
It's all about life is 1% that happens to us. 99% is how we react to it or respond to it, right? So it's really about going inwards and understanding my own self and just aligning my body, mind, and soul with exercise, with lifestyle principles, with a morning routine that grounds me, and just understanding how my nervous system works and what just puts me out, out of alignment. And practicing that every single day helps me be greater self-aware and emotionally resilient and mentally clear, and just handle situations calmly and knowing that it's okay, and managing fear every single day, because that's the biggest challenge we have, is the fear that keeps us small and stuck and in doubt and in uncertainty.
And I think that when I was a brand new business owner, I thought fear is going to go away because I've done it before. And as I started opening other arms of my business, what I realized is like, oh, fear is there always. And you're right, it's there literally every day. It's bigger with certain, life experiences, but learning to work with fear and expecting fear to show up was like a nice shift of like, oh, there you are. Right. You're here, and you're not. If I don't run away from you and I like touch the flame, is like I heard someone mention Tara Brach. Do you know Tara Brach? Do you ever listen to her stuff? Oh, I heard it on one of her podcasts, and it was like, boom, someone's looking into my brain. Like, if you can touch the fear of your emotions or touch the flame and realize it's actually not that hot, stay there, and it'll probably pass through, right? So I love that.
Make your brain your best friend. Like, just that self-talk, which is always bound to be so negative, the negativity bias, right? Changing that into things that do serve us. And it's been a practice. And I think my daily morning routine has helped me greatly. And that's something that I don't miss. And it just sets me up for a better day. And that adds up to be a better week. And I think we all have the same fears.
Yeah. And I do think practice is such a key word here, because I think sometimes I will think that I'm there or something. It's a destination. And it's like, no, it's not. That's going to bubble up, and you not being afraid to work with it. It's okay. And that idea that it's practice every single day. It's like a new start every day. Like, okay, that was yesterday. Here we are today. What are we working with today?
Yeah. We just keep growing and making more impact and facing larger challenges, but we're more prepared, I think. Our resilience is built, and our window of tolerance gets larger, and all good things. So I use yoga, meditation, and breath work as a daily practice. I incorporate, all these three things, as well as try to live an Ayurvedic life, like eating clean and all of the lifestyle principles that ancient Indian wisdom has already put out there for thousands of years. And I love going deeper into my own culture, and it feels very familiar, yet something that I've lost touch with for a few years. So it's nice to get back.
Ritual. Yeah, that's really nice.
Yes. And I know you have your own practices. Like do you still operate the yoga studio?
I do. I love to teach. So I teach, anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a week. And I love it because it is a small 1 hour window where I can measure impact in a really easy way. Real estate has very long timelines. So I might be working on something for 3 years before it's realized. Yeah. And then how often do I understand that impact, right? It's not all that often. It is. There's some, but in fitness, when you're teaching, or Pilates is my background, functional movement, people come in with stuff, big emotional stuff, big physical stuff. They just come in. And if we can soften that, and I can create just a little bit of a softer space for them, either to work hard or not. Yeah. Sometimes it's not. And I'm working on downgrading their nervous system because they are high-powered CEOs that have the pressure of the world on their shoulders, and they have to be tough everywhere they go, and then they can come in and not be tough in my space. So sometimes it's that too. Yeah. And then my own practice has deepened so much in the past 5 years, because 5 years ago this October, I had a brain injury. So I've worked with, when you said learning to work with your nervous system, that's probably the thing that I needed to understand the most in order to heal from that. And it stopped me in my tracks. I mean, it was for sure out of those sliding door moments is one of the top hard things of my life. And to understand, also I got to a place where I couldn't zip up a zipper. I remember once I didn't know which way a dollar sign was facing when I was taking notes in front of a group. I didn't remember "You Are My Sunshine" when I was singing it to my child. Like, just my brain was a total, wires were sticking out my ears basically, and living in just crazy, crazy pain, like, 8, 9, 10s every day. And so to understand how you can heal your brain, not everybody is able to, but for me, I searched far and wide and poked around, and I couldn't read, so I couldn't research. It was really hard for me to research because my brain would get overloaded really quickly. So finding the best people to understand how to put my brain back together took a really long time. It took about, I would probably say 2.5 years easily, to where I was into about an 85% functionality. And now I live between 85 and 100, depending on if I'm in any sort of flare up, which still happens. However, I'm not as emotionally charged, because I thought I was going to be broken forever. And when you don't have access to your brain, which I have always really depended on and believed that I was smart and creative. And so when I couldn't access that creativity, because I couldn't even read a paragraph and understand what people in the room were saying, or I couldn't understand, is she giving me a look right now? And I was confused all the time. I couldn't understand jokes. I couldn't understand tone. It was just, you lose like facial recognition, like of people. I would be training people in my studio that I'd known for 5 years, and partway through the session, I'd be like, what is this person's name? And so then my brain would get stressed trying to remember the name. And then I would start mumbling. Losing access to speech. All of those things just went away. And so to piece that back together with practices like meditation and understanding how even blood sugar can work in your brain, and working with that, and monitoring stress and amount of tickets you actually have access to, because we don't have 10 tickets every day. Some days we only have 2 tickets. So how do we work with that? And even if I'm not in a brain flare up, I still look at that. What else is on my plate? If I have a lot of stress, I make my life pretty small. Yeah. If I'm less stressed, then I can say yes to things like a podcast with a friend, or I can say yes to a social activity at night, because nights are when I run out of steam. So it has been a crazy, crazy, huge lesson, but understanding how my nervous system works and using meditation and just downgrade. Like, I think as women have met so many, probably I would say 50 easily, that we just work. And they're often type A type people. And then at some point their system crashes, whether they get chronically injured, which I was a chronically injured person. And I think my brain injury was just like the final straw to just understand that, like, we're actually not built to live under this much stress. And the way our society has operated, it's insane, right? And so this undoing of like, hey, we're not built for that. And that's okay to say, like, no, I'm not, I don't have the space. Like, I love to mentor. There are times that I'm like, call me in a month. I really am interested in this. This is just not something I can do right now, or whatever, right? Whatever the answer is, if I'm not careful with how I spend my energy, I can give it away, because I love people. I love, like, even in a super healthy space, I can go until my little cup is completely empty. And then I come home and we have 2 busy, cute little kids that just want to, love on me, and I want to love on them. And then I have a husband that I'm trying to maintain a relationship with. And if I'm empty, what do they get? Right. That means they don't even have a drop for them. And then if I'm empty, where do I drink?
Yeah.
There's nothing for me either. So then I was staying in this chronic pain and chronic inflammation of my brain. So it was an intense learning period and a confusing space because I couldn't just research it. I couldn't read. So anything on a screen was unavailable. So I would be talking to people, meeting people, trying all of these different holistic ways to calm my brain down, and had a lot of misses, but definitely 100% had forced me, like your ankle, to change my entire life.
Wow. I had no idea. What a journey. Thank you so much for sharing such a deep personal story that is going to help so many women. And, just how you handled what life, threw at you, because it seems like it's been life-changing for you. This, and how long ago was this?
5 years this
5
October.
years ago. And you've made a full 360-degree, turnaround. And that is so inspiring and reinforcing the fact that stress is just not good for you, for the family, and that we have to find alternate ways of living and doing business. And yet you continue to be ultra successful entrepreneur, and having been through so much and coming out the other side, learning how to basically take care of yourself and manage stress and manage fear and make it work for you. So that's something that we all in our 30s kind of struggle, because we're trying to build.
We want to build. That's your building generation for sure.
Yeah. And it's great. And we think, and it's impossible, like physically, to have babies and to be building. And yet,
even if you're not having babies, it is physically impossible.
Exactly, physically impossible. And you're right. Not everybody does, but I think most women. I think 30s is kind of the reproductive decade, if you will. And so it's really hard, and we are so hard on ourselves for not being a great mom, for not being a great entrepreneur, for not doing something. But I think it requires a system change to have more male allies, to have more support around us. And we should be building. And I think just being creative and using our creativity and expressing our soul's expression at any age is okay, whether it's 20s, 30s, or 40s. But I think just being realistic of
what we actually can do.
Yeah.
And I used to think that was like,
oh,
that's stupid, that's so limiting. But it's not. It's like in that time, I also learned to rely heavily on my team, because I think I was pretty controlling before. And I know there are times when I fall into scarcity, I'll drop back into control. I know we've talked about this actually at your restaurants, when you're like, do something funny. And when I walk into my studio and I'm out of control, I'll start like cleaning, and they're like, oh, here she goes. Why am I cleaning? Right. Yeah. And I think at that time, I knew I couldn't do it all. So, my business partner was amazing. And I was like, hey, I don't even know what I'm able to do. It's going to be really minimal. I own these things. I can't own anything else. And she built a team and systems, and people showed up to work in them, so I could get out at the day to day, and I had to release control. And it was hard, because I love having an opinion on literally everything, which is not actually something that's needed. Yeah. And so it's not that I was a perfectionist, but because having a small business, you can touch it all. And then as your business grows, you have to step back, you have to let things go. And I'm not good at that all the time. And we're still adjusting to that, because I still want some visibility, and but to be able to pull back and trust your team, I think that was also a huge lesson that I don't think I was doing well before, and probably still need to still keep working on that. But that's something that was like, whoa, we're actually not built to do this alone. So why do we try?
Right. Yeah, it's the ego.
And why don't we ask for help? And, why did I not tell people how it really was? Why was I still showing up I remember I showed up to this dinner, and I totally should have canceled. And I was there, and we're trying to play it was like a game night situation, and the noise was so loud because there was a bunch of little kids. And then I used to wear earplugs everywhere I went because sounds are really intense. And all of a sudden I stood up and burst into tears because it felt like there was a fire alarm going off in my brain and I couldn't breathe. And it was like such a silly moment, but why was I there? Like if I was that close to the edge, why wasn't I just being transparent with that friend and saying, this is, and it like, I still get embarrassed, you know, when I lose my words and I'm speaking in front of a group and my brain gets hot and I can feel them start to disintegrate. Right. But usually if I'm transparent, people are so kind and so helpful. So that would have been such an easy call to say, my brain is a mess. I know it's not a great move to be canceling on a good friend like you, but I actually can't. I'm not going to add to the group anyways. I mean, I'm just a disaster. I should be in bed and I should have been in bed by probably 2 p.m. But I just would push it and push it and push it. And I don't know why it took me so long to learn that lesson, but it did. And I still have to keep relearning it.
Yeah. Wow. It's because we, particularly as women, are so used to putting everybody else around us, you know, ahead of us, right? Like I'm glad that you, did you have a conversation with the friend? No. Okay. And I think the thing about letting go is so important, even if things are going great. I think, you know, what got us here will not get us to where we want to be. So, you know,
damn, Lavanya, that's so good. That's got to go on a wall. I need to write that down.
I don't know if I can take full credit, but yes, it's something I truly believe. Like, you know, what got us here will not get us to the next step. We got to let go. We got to surrender.
And that is so hard. You're so much better at that. I'm like I'll hold on. During this time period, I also had some big friendship changes, I think, because I changed a lot, you know, and I was just holding on for dear life. Like, you can't leave. We've been friends forever. And they knew, you know, they were better at letting go of like, hey, this isn't, it's okay. You know, and I was like, no, I was holding on to the last little kernels of sand and like just gripping so hard because I have such a hard time, you know, when people exit my life, whether it's in a job, in a friendship, in just like the natural life transitions of like, oh, now my kids go to school somewhere else, so I don't see that person. Like I just have a hard time with accepting that. So I'm going to put it on a wall somewhere so I can look at it every day.
Leading into that, it's about attachment. It's about detachment.
I know.
It's my next thing. Like, so important to be detached.
Unattached. It's so hard to practice. This is something I am working with.
I think it's
well.
greater love to detach. Because
it is.
That's the right thing for them and for you. And it decreases suffering, and
it does decrease suffering, which, man, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
A little less suffering.
Right.
A little more smiling, a little more lightheartedness. I do have a tendency to take myself very seriously, which can definitely increase my suffering and my attachment and all of those things. But, you know, I'm a work in progress. So I hope I have got better at all of those things.
You are beautiful inside and out. And this has been we can continue talking, but I think we'll keep that for another episode. This has been so great. Thank you for being open, kind, compassionate, generous, and just vulnerable with your story, and for inspiring me and everybody who's listening that, you know, hardships are a part of life, but that, you know, our past does not have to define who we are. We can create our future by leaning into our true self, our authentic self, and showing up, you know, fearlessly. And
Or also like let those hardships slightly define you, because I feel like they helped chisel me into this amazing human that's got a lot of dimension because of those hardships.
Absolutely.
And without them, I'd probably be pretty boring.
Yeah. I think I meant more like the trauma that, you know, people, we kind
it's
of
easy to
live
stay
in
attached,
that,
right?
stay attached to that. But no, you know, challenges are so important and shape who we are. So
I know. I'm sure people listen to this are like, see, she's still attached to her brain injury, still attached to the suffering. And I'm thinking, Yeah.
We'll be detached to that.
I'm working
talk.
on that. I would say I've come a long ways. It
You
does not
have.
feel, I don't feel as attached, but it is a recent one that feels
Yeah.
just still big.
It's a part of your story. You use that to empower women. Like,
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people talk about brain injuries. And so for me, when I didn't get better, I was like, why aren't more people talking about this? And a couple really amazing people helped me out that were also in that recovery space, but it was a really, really tricky space.
wow, my ankle injury is pale compared
No,
to
and it's not about
brain
comparative suffering, right? That's like a whole different,
Yes,
because we can
yes,
drop into
yes,
that of like, oh, I don't deserve to
Yeah.
be sad because look at everything I have, or you know,
Yeah.
whatever. That's
Yeah.
sometimes where
No.
my husband can take himself.
I had some shame around that.
Yeah.
Like, ankle injury is what transformed my life. It just seems so small, but you
No.
know, my pain is the same. Like, we all have different things that happen, but the pain is the same.
Right.
Yes.
It's like all the emotions are the
Yes.
same, but the way we access
Yes.
them is all from different points.
Yes.
And that's what makes us human, not how we got there.
Right.
You know, that my pain, like it's still pain.
Yeah.
And pain is pain. Pain is pain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that interesting. And why not be inspired on a couch when you've got nothing else to do, right?
Right.
And I feel like that's just like some people pass through an ankle injury or a brain injury without having those big enlightenments, because that's not the time for them to have those, right? But sometimes we're ready and open, and I must have been. I mean, I think I was also forced to in that space of surrender.
Yeah, and that's why we're sharing our story, so younger women, a younger generation can
Don't be like us.
Yeah, don't get to that point where we work ourselves to an injury of sorts, and it's going to happen sooner or later. So, what is a piece of advice you want to give to our younger women entrepreneurs or wannabe
I
entrepreneurs?
think that my biggest wish for the women out there that are, you know, still here, and also for my daughters, is that they get to be their full selves. That's something that's like a newer lesson for me that I've been working on for, you know, over a decade for sure. But I am finally, I can live there now and stay there and feel myself when I pop out. So knowing that, you know, you are enough, and you're exactly the person, the perfect person for this time and for this adventure. And so I hope my kids do not have to go through as much masking or, you know, playing small that I had to. I hope I can retain as a mother. That's like my greatest hope is like not only that they're happy and healthy and all of that, but just that they are themselves without having to change themselves. Because I think I did that for many, many, many years.
Yeah, and I'm positive having you as a role model, they will turn out just the way you described.
They'll go to therapy for other things that I'll be like, oh, that didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, they'll always have their challenges,
Right?
because that's how they'll grow. Yes.
Yeah.
At least this thing we're clear about, that they will be their full selves.
Yeah.
You know, our wish will be true. Yes.
Also, this generation's doing it so much better.
Yeah,
They have so much different role models and things to like women to look up to. So
absolutely.
I feel excited about that and the time
a lot
we're
of
living
choices. Yeah. Amazing. Well,
Thank
I
you
love
so
you,
much.
Tessa. You're amazing. Thank
love you too.
Thank you so much. And
in. Thanks for inspiring me.
since
Since I was
right
24
back
years
at
old.
you. Likewise, yes. And